You know, we're always looking for the next big thing, right? That next huge invention that's going to solve all our problems. But what if the most advanced solutions aren't waiting to be invented, but are just waiting to be rediscovered? What if the future of technology is actually ancient? To dig into that, we're going to start with a story of a catastrophe.
93%. Just think about that number for a second. That's how many traditional homes in Nepal's Thame Valley were either damaged or just completely wiped out in a single event. A number like that isn't just about buildings. It's an entire way of life suddenly shattered.
So what happened? Well, back in 2015, the Gorkha earthquake hit Nepal. It sent these massive shockwaves through a region where people had been building their homes pretty much the same way for centuries. They were using local stone, local timber, designs that were perfectly tuned for the super harsh Himalayan climate. But in just a few minutes, all of that tradition was put to this absolutely brutal test.
Okay, so let's start right there, with this Himalayan tragedy. To really get what happened next, we have to look at the immediate aftermath. We need to see exactly how these ancient buildings failed when the earth started shaking so violently.
And what's so wild is that it wasn't just random chaos. The engineers who went in there saw the same things happening over and over again. You had these super heavy stone gables at the top of the roofs just collapsing. The outer stone walls would literally peel away from the wooden frame inside, and you'd see these classic X-cracks, spreading out from the corners of windows and doors. And the longest walls, without any support, they just buckled outwards and fell. This wasn't just destruction, it was a clear pattern of failure.
So that leads to the big question, right? Why? Why did these buildings fail so spectacularly? Why did a building style that had worked for the Sherpa people for generations just crumble when a tremor hit? The answer, it turns out, is all about the unique physics of an earthquake.
Okay, so here's the thing. Those traditional Sherpa houses, they were absolute genius designs for dealing with vertical loads. The weight of heavy snow, the simple force of gravity. But what they weren't designed for was the crazy side-to-side shaking of an earthquake. The way they were built just didn't have features like timber bands to tie the walls together or strong connections to anchor the roof. They were missing the stuff that creates a solid, box-like structure that can actually move with the shaking instead of fighting.
So does this mean centuries of tradition were just a failure? Completely wrong? It's so easy to just say, tear it all down, let's build with concrete and steel. But what if that's the wrong question? What if we're just looking at the whole idea of technology in a way that's way too narrow?
And that's where we get to the heart of it, the knowledge we forgot. This is where we need to bring in a really powerful idea, one that totally reframes traditional not as something primitive, but as a different and honestly a much more sophisticated kind of technology. And that idea is called Lo-TEK. It was coined by the designer and author Julia Watson. Now, it sounds like low-tech, but don't let that fool you. It means pretty much the opposite. This is not about simple tools. Lo-TEK actually stands for Traditional Ecological Knowledge. It's the collected wisdom built up over thousands of years, passed down from generation to generation, all about how to create these incredibly complex systems that work with nature, not trying to fight. And this chart, it just lays out the difference perfectly. You've got the industrial mindset on one side, which basically sees nature as something to conquer, something to extract resources from. It's all about speed and scale. But low-tech, that's a whole different game. It comes from deep observation, from adapting over time. It's about working in symbiosis with nature, thinking in terms of generations, not quarterly reports. It understands that we humans are just one piece of a much, much bigger ecosystem.
But look, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's a collection of some of the most jaw-droppingly innovative technologies that are alive and kicking right now. Let's just look at a couple of examples to see how unbelievably powerful this approach really is.
Okay, get this. In one of the wettest places on Earth, the Khasi people in India, they don't build bridges, they grow them. It's amazing. They literally guide the roots of a rubber tree across these insane raging rivers and then weave them into a living, breathing structure. Now, it takes about 50 years before a bridge is strong enough to walk on, but once it is, it can last for over 500 years. And it gets stronger every single year. I mean, that's technology that's literally designed for deep time.
Or, how about this? An entire civilization built from just one single plant. I mean, for the Uros people of Lake Titicaca in Peru, that's not some crazy idea. That's just reality. The Uros literally build their entire world from this one plant, the Totora reed. They go out and they harvest these huge, dense blocks of its roots, lash them together, and create floating islands right there on the lake. And then, the reeds themselves, They use those to build their houses, their boats. It's even a source of food and medicine. This isn't just about being sustainable. It's a completely integrated system where life and technology are one and the same with their environment. It is literally a technology that floats.
All right, so now that we have this bigger, broader idea of what technology can be, let's go back to Nepal. What happens when we stop looking at their tradition as a failure that needs to be replaced and instead see it as a foundation that we can build upon?
And this is where it gets really cool, where modern engineering meets ancient wisdom. Instead of just bulldozing everything, engineers looked at those specific weak points we talked about and came up with targeted fixes. For those long, unsupported walls, they add timber buttresses. To keep the walls from pulling apart when things shake, they weave in horizontal timber bands. And those super heavy, dangerous stone gables, they replace them with lightweight metal. And the most important part, they improve how the roof connects to the walls, so the whole building acts like one solid unit. And this is the real takeaway here. The goal isn't to pick sides, old versus new. It's about creating a hybrid. It's an approach that respects the culture, uses local materials, and honors a design that worked for centuries, while at the same time using what we know about modern seismic principles to make it safer for the future. It's about integration, not erasure.
So this story from Nepal, it's a really powerful lesson, and it has a message for all of us. As we're facing bigger and bigger climate crises and running out of resources, our constant obsession with inventing the next big thing might be making us blind to our single greatest asset.
It's like Julia Watson says in this quote, "We're drowning in information, but we're starving for wisdom. We have all the data in the world, terabytes of it, about our climate. But we've totally ignored these huge libraries of human knowledge, stuff that's been tested over millennia, on how to actually live in balance with the world around us." The Lo-TEK way of thinking argues that this wisdom, that's the most valuable data we have.
And so that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. The living bridges of the Khasi, the floating islands of the Uros, these aren't just quaint relics of the past. They are incredibly sophisticated nature-based technologies that give us a peek into a more resilient future. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what other ancient knowledge is out there right now, just waiting for us to see it, not as something primitive, but as something profoundly advanced?